the mud-covered stranger. The night was cold. Rain poured down like the sky was crying. Jaren walked back to his small cabin after a long day fixing broken machines. He lived alone, on the edge of the forest. People in town didn't visit much. He liked it that way. As he passed his old shed, he noticed something strange in the mud. At first he thought it was just a pile of cloth. But then, it moved. He stopped. His heart beat faster. He slowly stepped closer. There, lying face down, in the thick mud, was a figure. It was a woman. Her skin was not human, pale, with soft purple marks along her shoulders. Her arms were thin, shaking from the cold. She was naked. Mud covered most of her body. Her long silver hair was stuck to her face and back. She looked like she had fallen from the stars. Jaren dropped to his knees beside her. "Hey," he said gently. "Can you hear me?" She didn't answer. Her lips trembled. Her hands clawed, weakly at the ground like she wanted to move but couldn't. Jaren looked around. No one was in sight. The rain kept falling. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "She'll die out here," he whispered to himself. Still, a part of him hesitated. What if she was dangerous? What if this was some kind of trap? But then, he looked at her face. She wasn't a monster. She was scared. Jaren pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around her. The woman flinched at his touch but didn't resist. Her skin was ice cold. "Don't worry," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." He picked her up in his arms. She was so light, like she hadn't eaten in days or weeks. As he carried her, her eyes slowly opened. Bright violet, full of fear. She looked at him and whispered just one word in a soft, broken voice. "Please." That was all. He didn't speak. He just walked, faster now. He reached the cabin, kicked open the door, and stepped inside. The fire was low. He placed her gently on a soft blanket near the warmth. She coughed weakly. Mud dripped from her hair and hands. Her knees had cuts. Her back had bruises. Jaren grabbed another blanket and wrapped her tightly. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. She lay still, her eyes half closed. Every breath she took sounded painful. He moved to the kitchen, heated up some soup, and brought it to her. He lifted the spoon to her lips. She didn't open her mouth. "You need food," he said calmly. She looked at the spoon, then at him, and slowly, carefully opened her mouth just a little. He fed her bit by bit. She tried to speak again, but no sound came out. "Shh," Jaren said, later. "You're safe now." But deep inside, he wasn't sure if that was true. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she alone in the forest, with no clothes, no food, and no memory? And worst of all, what if someone was looking for her? He looked out the window, only darkness and rain. But something didn't feel right. As he sat beside her, watching over her sleeping face, her body still shaking lightly from the cold, he didn't see the shadow across the road. A figure stood far away, watching the cabin from behind the trees. Cliffhanger, the mud-covered stranger had been found. But what Jaren didn't know was, he wasn't the only one who had been searching for her. The storm had passed, but the clouds still hung low the next morning. Jaren sat in a chair near the fire, watching the alien woman sleep. She hadn't moved much through the night, but her breathing was stronger now. That gave him hope. He brought a fresh bowl of water and gently cleaned the mud from her face. Under the dirt, her skin shimmered faintly in the light. Not human, but not frightening. Either, she looked peaceful, almost soft, yet her body showed signs of suffering, bruises, cuts, old scars. Jaren stood up and stepped outside to gather wood. His cabin was quiet, but his thoughts weren't. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why was she left to die in the mud? When he came back inside, he heard movement. She was awake. She had pulled the blanket around herself tightly and sat curled in the corner of the couch, eyes wide. She looked like a small animal, trapped and ready to run. "It's okay," Jaren said calmly. "You're safe here." She stared at him for a long time as if trying to read his soul. Then she spoke, her voice cracked and weak. Where am I?" "My cabin," Jaren replied. "I found you outside, in the mud. Do you remember anything?" She closed her eyes and pressed her fingers to her forehead. Her hands shook. I don't know," she whispered. "I ran. I fell. There was fire, screaming, then cold." She opened her eyes again, confused. "I don't know who I am." Jaren sat on the other end of the couch. "That's okay. You don't have to remember right now." She touched the blanket around her and looked down at her skin. This body is mine?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, you're different. But I'm not afraid of you." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I was afraid of me." Jaren got up and walked to the small kitchen. He warmed some tea and poured it into a cup, then brought it to her. She held the cup with trembling hands, sipping carefully. "Do you want me to call someone?" he asked. Her eyes went wide with panic. "No, no one. Please." He held up his hands. "Okay, no calls, no police, no one." She breathed fast, heart pounding. Her whole body tensed like she was ready to jump out of the window. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "You can stay as long as you need." She looked at him again. This time, longer. Like she was searching for something in his face. "Trust, safety? You're human," she said quietly. "Yes, they said humans kill." He raised an eyebrow. "Who said that?" She paused, then shook her head. "I don't remember." Silence filled the room. Jaren stood up and grabbed some clean clothes from a storage box, loose pants and a long shirt. He placed them on the car table near her. "They're not fancy, but they'll keep you warm." She stared at them for a moment, then whispered, "Thank you." He turned around to give her privacy. She dressed slowly, her limbs weak and unsteady. A few minutes later, she spoke again. "You saved me. I just couldn't leave you there," Jaren said. "No one ever helps," she replied. He turned back and looked at her. Her eyes weren't just scared anymore. They were confused. Like she didn't understand kindness. Like no one had ever treated her with care before. "What should I call you?" he asked. She thought for a while. "I don't know. How about we pick a name? Until you remember." She looked at him. Slowly, a small nod. He smiled. "Let's go with Rhea." "Rhea," she repeated. "That sounds nice." Suddenly her body stiffened. She gripped the cup tightly. "What is it?" Jaren asked. Her breathing grew fast, her eyes darted around. "They're coming," she whispered. "They'll find me." "Who?" She looked at him with terror. "I don't know, but I feel it. I feel them getting close." Jaren stood up and went to the window. Nothing yet. No ships, no footsteps, no lights, but Rhea's fear wasn't fake. Her instincts were screaming. He looked back at her, now trembling again. "Rhea, if someone comes here, I'll protect you. I promise." She looked like she wanted to believe that, wanted to feel safe. But the fear didn't leave her eyes. Not yet. The next morning, the fire crackled gently inside Jaren's cabin. Rhea sat quietly on a small stool, wrapped in warm clothes. Her hair was still damp from the night before, but her eyes had more color now. She looked less like someone on the edge of death, and more like someone slowly waking up from a nightmare. Jaren sat across from her at the table. He had made eggs and toast, but Rhea barely touched her plate. She kept glancing at the window as if something might appear out there at any moment. "Did you sleep at all?" Jaren asked. "A little," she whispered. "But I kept seeing fire, and metal, and chains." He leaned forward. "Chains?" She looked down at her hands. I think I was taken, caged, sold. The words came slowly, but each one hit, like a hammer. Jaren's stomach tightened. Sold, like as a slave? She gave a small nod. I don't remember faces, but I remember being pulled, hurt, and voices, laughing. She lifted her arm and showed him the faint, long scar near her shoulder. One of them put this here, to remind me. I had no name. Jaren couldn't believe what he was hearing. He reached across the table and gently touched her wrist. Rhea, you don't belong to anyone now. You're free here. Her lips trembled. She blinked back tears. I didn't know humans could be kind. Well, he sighed, not all of us are monsters. A soft silence followed. Then, suddenly she pulled her sleeve up higher. There's something in here, she said, pointing at her upper arm. It hurts, deep inside. He gently examined the spot, a small bump under the skin. His eyes widened. That's a tracker. She didn't understand. What is that? It's a device. Someone can use to find you. Wherever you go, Rhea. Froze. So they're coming. Jaren stood up and grabbed his old scanner from the workbench. He placed it over her arm and the screen blinked. It's active, he said quietly. And it's sending out a signal. Fear filled Rhea's eyes. They'll find me. Not. If we remove it, Jaren said. Can you do that? He hesitated. I'm not a doctor, but I can try. It's risky. Rhea looked him in the eye. I'd rather bleed than go back. Jaren nodded. Okay, we'll do it. Tonight. But first, we prepare. He walked to a small cabinet, pulling out gloves, an old surgical kit, and alcohol. Then he paused. Rhea, he said slowly, do you know who they are? The ones who took you? She shook her head. Not clearly, but they were not from one world. Different voices, different smells. They called me Item 6. Jaren clenched his fists. You're not an item. You're a person. She gave him a weak smile. You talk like I matter. You do, he said firmly. Later that afternoon, Rhea went to wash up in the back room. As she removed her shirt, she looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her body was thin, too thin. Her skin, though still glowing faintly, had marks, scars, burns. Names in another language etched cruelly across her ribs. Each one was proof of what she had survived. She touched the writing gently and whispered, I am not yours anymore. In the other room, Jaren was checking the scanner again. He frowned. Something had changed. The signal was pulsing faster. Someone had activated the tracker. They know, he muttered. He rushed toward the door and scanned the sky. No ships yet, but it was only a matter of time. When Rhea stepped out, he looked at her with concern. We don't have days, he said. We might not even have hours. She didn't flinch. Then let's remove it. Now. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, sit down. This might hurt. She sat on the table, bracing herself. Jaren cleaned the area with alcohol, grabbed the small blade, and looked at her one last time. You sure? Yes. He made the cut. Rhea bit her lip, holding back a scream. Blood trickled down. He worked fast, searching inside for the chip, and then he pulled it out, a small, blinking piece of metal. Cold. Cruel. He dropped it into a bowl and smashed it with a hammer. Rhea gasped for breath, sweat on her forehead. Jaren wrapped her arm, gently. It's out, he whispered. They can't find you now, not easily. But deep in the forest, miles away, a pair of glowing eyes stared at a pulsing screen. The signal had stopped, but the hunt had already begun. Rain fell again, thin and cold, the kind of rain that made the trees whisper secrets and the ground soft enough to remember footsteps. Jaren watched from his cabin window, uneasy. Rhea lay on the couch, resting. Her arm was bandaged. She had barely spoken since he removed the tracker. Her body was healing, but her soul was still shaken. Outside, something felt off. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, and no safety. He walked out with his rifle, checking the dirt path leading to town. That's when he saw it. Boot prints. Fresh. Heavy. Not. His heart dropped. He knelt and touched the print, still wet. Whoever left it had passed by less than 20 minutes ago. Jaren looked up toward the tree line and saw the broken branch. Someone had stood there, watching. He hurried back inside. "Rhea," he said, his voice sharp but calm. "We have to move." She opened her eyes slowly. "Is it time?" "They're close. I saw signs. They know you were here." She sat up. Her legs were weak, but she nodded. "Where will we go?" Jaren pulled out a small pack. "There's an old ranger bunker in the woods. Few know it exists. We'll hide there." Rhea wrapped herself in the thick cloak he handed her. She didn't ask questions. She just followed. They left through the back, avoiding the main trail. Jaren moved carefully, eyes scanning every shadow. Rhea kept her head down, her breathing shallow. For an hour, they said nothing. Then, something moved behind them. Jaren turned, gun raised. Nothing. Just trees. And dripping leaves. But Rhea froze. "I feel them," she whispered. "They're near." They moved faster. By the time they reached the rocky hill that led to the hidden cave, Rhea was shaking from exhaustion. Jaren helped her climb. Inside, the bunker was dark and dusty but dry. Metal walls, old human tech. It had been abandoned for years. "This'll work," Jaren said, locking the door from inside. "We'll rest here, regroup." Rhea sat against the wall. "You believe me?" "No?" "I believed you the moment you said please," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Thank you." Outside, the hunters moved through the forest. They were not human, tall, wearing dark cloaks that bent the light. Their eyes glowed green. Their skin was leathery, thick like armor. One of them sniffed the air. She was here. Another checked a scanner. The signal had stopped, but the scent remained. "She's damaged. Slow. She won't get far." The leader raised his hand. "Find her. The master wants her alive." "But broken," one hissed. The beasts they brought with them snarled low and sniffed the air. Not natural animals. Creatures bred to track, to tear, to drag prey back in chains. Inside the bunker, Jaren lit a small lantern. Rhea looked at the dim light, eyes filled with memories. "There were others like me," she said. "Taken, caged. We were numbers, nothing more." Jaren sat beside her. "How many?" "Too many to count. Some didn't survive. Some were sold to rich worlds. I ran when the ship crashed during transfer. You escaped fate," he said. "But for how long?" she asked. Jaren didn't answer. Suddenly a low growl echoed outside. Rhea stiffened. "What was that?" she whispered. Jaren stood, gun ready. Something followed us. The growl grew louder, closer. The metal door rattled, then silence. Then, boom, the whole bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling, another bang, louder. "They found us," Jaren said, grabbing Rhea's hand. "But how?" she asked. "The tracker's gone." "They may not need the tracker anymore." He aimed the rifle at the door, finger steady. "If they come in," he said, "we don't give up. We fight." Rhea's eyes burned with sudden fire. "No," she said. "We survive." Outside, the lead hunter placed his clawed hand on the door. "She's inside," he hissed. "We break it. We take her." But as they raised their weapons, the ground behind them shifted. They didn't know. Someone else had followed their trail, and he wasn't part of their team. The silence was sharp. Inside the bunker, Jaren stood with his rifle aimed at the metal door. Rhea knelt behind the table, her wounded arm pressed to her chest. Her breath came fast. Sweat beaded on her forehead. even though the bunker was cold. Outside, the alien hunters waited. One of them whispered in a strange, crackling language. Another lifted a heavy energy tool, like a giant torch mixed with a drill. Then came the first strike. Clang! The bunker door groaned under the force. Dust rained from the ceiling. Jaren didn't flinch. Rhea looked at him. "We can't fight them." "We don't have to win," he said. "We just have to survive." Another strike. Boom. And then, silence. No sounds, no breathing, not even the wind. Jaren narrowed his eyes. Why did they stop? Rhea closed her eyes. Something's changed. Outside, the lead hunter stepped forward. He touched the wall, then turned his head sharply. One of the other hunters had disappeared, vanished. No scream, no sound, just gone. The others spread out. A low growl echoed through the trees, not from their beasts, from something else. The team of hunters suddenly looked uneasy. Their leader raised his weapon. "Watcher is here," he growled. The others froze. "Impossible. He's dead." "No," the leader said. "The human who lives in shadows, the one who hunts hunters." Another body vanished into the trees. This time, there was a scream. Inside the bunker, Rhea looked up sharply. "Someone's out there," she whispered. Jaren nodded slowly. "But not them?" "No, different. Wild. Old." He looked at her. "Friend or enemy?" "I don't know," she said softly. In the forest, the hunters regrouped. 3 were missing. One aimed his scanner at the trees, and it exploded in his hand. A voice came from the dark. "You hunt the wrong prey tonight." The hunters turned, firing into the trees, too late. A blur of movement, a figure cloaked in dark metal, body marked with scars and symbols of old wars. He moved like smoke. The third shadow, one of the last ghost operatives of Earth's forgotten war. He didn't speak again. He didn't need to. His weapons were silence and fear. Back in the bunker, the shaking stopped. Jaren kept his rifle raised. Rhea whispered, "They're dying." He looked at her. "How do you know?" "I feel it. Their pain, their fear, like I used to feel mine." Jaren lowered his weapon just slightly. Then, a knock. But it was soft, not metal, not loud, just a knock. He moved to the door carefully. "Who is it?" he called out. No answer. He opened the small viewing slit. A human stood there, dressed in worn armor, hair gray. One eye was covered with a tech visor. His hands were stained with dark blood, not his own. "I took care of your problem," the man said calmly. "Who are you?" Jaren asked. The man smiled just slightly. "I'm the one who makes sure no one forgets what humans can do." Jaren opened the door, slowly. The man stepped inside, calm and quiet. He looked at Rhea and nodded once. They marked her. Slave. Code. I've seen it before. Rhea stared at him. You're not like him, she said, pointing to Jaren. You're something else. The man didn't deny it. I've seen too much, he said, and I've hunted every kind of monster. He handed Jaren a small chip. This came from their leader. Shows who they work for. Jaren held the chip. Why are you helping us? The man's face darkened. Because long ago, I didn't, and I still dream about the ones I didn't save. He walked to the door again. They'll send more, he said. Stronger ones. Ships. Drones. Jaren looked at Rhea. She looked exhausted, but stronger now. Her fear was still there, but now it had something beside it. Hope. What do we do? Jaren asked. The man smiled. You hide, you run, you survive. He turned to Rhea. And next time, you fight back. Then he was gone. Vanished into the rain. That night, Jaren and Rhea sat in the bunker listening to the wind. He saved us, Rhea said softly. No, Jaren replied. He reminded us. We save each other. Outside, the trees whispered. The third shadow was gone, but war was coming. Cliffhanger. They survived tonight, but now Rhea knows the truth. They're just the beginning. The hunters are part of something much bigger, and she may be the key. The next morning, the bunker was silent. Sunlight filtered through the narrow cracks in the steel walls. Jaren sat at a corner table, studying the chip the mysterious stranger had given him. It blinked softly, showing strange alien code. He couldn't read it, but he knew someone who could. Rhea. She stood at the far end of the bunker, slowly moving her fingers across the wall. Her steps were steadier now. She was healing, inside and out. Rhea, Jaren called. Do these symbols mean anything? To you? She turned, curious. He handed her the chip and she stared at it for a long moment. Then her face turned pale. I know this mark, she whispered. It belongs to the Red Crest Syndicate. Jaren leaned in. Who are they? Her lips trembled slightly. A group of warlords. They don't just sell slaves, they breed them, break them, train them to forget they were ever people. She held the chip tightly. This was their property tag. I was tagged. Jaren's jaw clenched. And now they want you back. No, she said, looking him in the eyes. Now they want revenge. Jaren nodded slowly. Then we need to be ready. Later that day, Jaren took Rhea to the old weapons locker in the back of the bunker. Dust covered everything, but the tools were still usable. Laser cutters, stun rods, basic armor. I don't want you to fight, he said, but I want you to choose. Not just hide. Rhea stepped forward and picked up a small energy dagger. Her hand trembled at first, then steadied. I used to be afraid of touching these, she said. Now I feel power. You were never weak, Jaren told her. You were caged. There's a difference. Rhea looked up. Thank you for seeing me as more than what they called me. What did they call you? He asked gently. She hesitated. Then she spoke. 6. Jaren frowned. That's not a name. I know, she said, but it's all I had, until you gave me Rhea. He smiled. Then let's make that name mean something. Night fell. Rhea sat by the fire inside the bunker. She had cleaned her wounds, tied back her silver hair, and wore armor that didn't quite fit, but gave her strength. Jaren returned from the woods with food, but something was off. He looked tense. What happened? She asked. I found something, he said, placing a small box on the table. It was buried near the river, still warm. Rhea opened the box and gasped. Inside was a collar, metal, heavy, with the same red crest she had seen on the chip. They were here, Jaren said quietly. Recently, probably left it as a message. She stared at the collar, hands shaking. They think I'll return to them. They think wrong, Jaren replied. Suddenly, a high-pitched alarm echoed through the bunker. A drone had crossed the outer sensor range. Rhea stood instantly. They found us again. Jaren grabbed his rifle. We moved to the second exit. But what if they're already there? He glanced at her. Then we do what your name means. She blinked. What? Rhea, he said. It's from an old Earth word. It means light in the darkness. She stared at him, stunned. You named me that? He nodded. Because even in the worst moment you glowed. You lived. Tears filled her eyes. Not from fear, but from being seen. Then the drone's buzz grew louder. They ran, through the back passage, through vines and dripping stone, until they reached a clearing. But the drone was there. It hovered silently, then aimed a red light at Rhea. Jaren fired first. Bang! The drone sparked and spun. Rhea followed with her dagger, leaping up and slashing through the core. It dropped. Twitching, Jaren stared. You've done that before. She looked at the broken drone. Maybe I have, but their victory was short. Above them, a dark ship hovered. Huge, silent, ready. The sky shimmered as the Red Crest Syndicate revealed their full force. A deep voice echoed through speakers. Return the girl, or we burn the forest. Jaren raised his weapon. Rhea stepped beside him. No, she whispered. They won't burn anything. Why? Because I remember something now, she said. Jaren looked at her. She stared at the ship. My real name, she said. What they stopped me from saying. I remember it now. She took a deep breath and said clearly, I am Serenia Vel, daughter of the House of Flame, and I was never yours. The giant black ship hovered above the forest, casting a shadow over everything below. Its engines rumbled like thunder. The voice of the Red Crest commander echoed again, louder this time. Serenia Vel, surrender yourself or we reduce everything to ash. But Serenia did not step back. She stood tall beside Jaren, her silver hair dancing in the wind, her injured arm wrapped in bandages, and her grip firm on the stolen energy dagger. The name Rhea had helped her survive. But now she remembered the name she was born with, Serenia Vel. Jaren looked at her with both awe and fear. Are you sure about this? She nodded. They didn't just steal my body. They tried to erase who I was, but now I remember and I'm done running. Jaren's hand moved to his rifle. Then let's show them who you really are. Above them, hatches opened on the Syndicate's ship. Soldiers began to drop down, dark-armored, armed with net guns and stun weapons. They thought this would be easy. But Serenia had fire in her eyes. As the first soldier hit the ground, she was already moving. She ducked low, rolled forward, and slashed his knee. He fell screaming. Another charged, but Jaren fired, knocking him down. They fought side by side, human and alien, protecting the land, their lives, and a truth bigger than either of them. Freedom is worth bleeding for. Inside the ship, the Red Crest commander growled. Why is she resisting? She was broken. A second officer stepped forward. Sir, she's regaining her memory, identity. She may be dangerous. The commander smashed the console. Then make her dead. He pressed a red button. The ship's main cannon began charging. Back below, Serenia felt the shift in the air. She turned to Jaren. The ship? It's powering something. We won't make it in time, he said. Yes, she whispered. We will. Serenia turned and ran toward the nearby hill, past the tree line, where an old human satellite dish still stood, abandoned since the last war. Where are you going? Jaren shouted, following her. She reached the dish's control box. You said this thing once connected to Earth's orbital grid, right? He nodded. But it hasn't worked in years. I don't need it to talk to Earth, she said. I just need it to talk to someone else. Jaren paused. Who? She looked up at him. My mother. Serenia slammed her hand on the controls. Nothing happened. Then she cut her palm and let a drop of blood fall onto the biometric pad. The screen lit up. ID, Vel Serenia, status, lost, signal, reactivated. Far away, in a sector of stars untouched by war, a sleeping beacon woke up. Queen stirred. Back in the forest, the Red Crest cannon glowed red, ready to fire. The commander smiled. Goodbye, little traitor. He never got the chance. The clouds cracked. A second ship, gold, majestic, massive, broke through the sky. It hovered above the Syndicate vessel like a lion over a wounded dog. Unidentified vessel. Stand down or be destroyed. The voice that echoed now was not male. It was fierce, regal, and filled with power. It was her mother. Serenia fell to her knees, exhausted but smiling. Jaren helped her up. Who are you? She breathed deeply. The air they never wanted to escape. The Red Crest ship turned sharply, trying to flee. The Queen's ship fired once. Clean, precise. The enemy vessel exploded in a burst of fire and sparks, crashing. into the far side of the mountain. Later, Serenia and Jaren stood beneath the stars as a royal shuttle landed gently in the grass. Out stepped a tall woman with glowing eyes and a long red cloak. Her presence was strong, but her face was full of emotion. "My daughter," the queen whispered. Serenia ran into her arms. Jaren looked away, giving them a moment. His job was done, but Serenia turned. "Jaren?" she called. He stopped. "You saved me. Gave me your coat, your food, your kindness. You would have done the same," he said. She smiled. "I wouldn't have even known how. Until I met you." The queen approached Jaren. "You cared for my child when others threw her away." Jaren shrugged. "She's the one who chose to fight." The queen extended her hand. "Come with us. Be more than just a mechanic. Be a friend to the throne." Jaren paused, then smiled. "Why not?" Epilogue. Serenia Vel stood on the balcony of her new world. Clean, dressed in royal red. No chains, no scars. Beside her stood the human who chose to help when no one else did. And now across stars people whispered the name of the girl who rose from the mud-covered stranger, who became a queen.